Guy Ritchie's latest movie more than makes up for the disappointment that was Operation Fortune. This afternoon, I went to go see The Covenant. I wasn't even aware that this movie was a thing until a couple months ago, I think, maybe not even, when it showed the trailer for it. And when it first showed the trailer, I was like, oh gosh, Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't think I can tolerate watching a movie with Jake in it again, because after I saw him in The Guilty, you guys, I was so put off of his movies for a long time. I didn't even want to see Ambulance because of how much I could not stand the sound of Jake's voice by the end of the Netflix movie, The Guilty. Anyway, I think I might be over that now. I just don't ever want to see The Guilty again. Jake Gyllenhaal was absolutely fantastic in this movie. I enjoyed his performance so much. And also, the performance of his co-star in here, I don't think I've ever seen this guy before. I think his name is Dar Salim, if I'm even pronouncing that correctly. He's the dude who played Ahmed, that guy right there. His performance was so good, just very heart-wrenching, and some of the scenes in here were rough to watch. I have so many thoughts and emotions as a result of having watched this film. Anyway, let me just go ahead and dive right into the synopsis, which if you've seen the trailer, you already know the synopsis. Jake Gyllenhaal plays, I think his character's name is John. John? He plays a soldier in Afghanistan. The year is 2018, and a new interpreter is brought on board with his team. And the interpreter's name is Ahmed, and it takes a little bit for them to kind of find a rapport because Jake doesn't really have complete confidence in this guy, doesn't necessarily trust this man's instincts. And so it takes a bit for them to develop this level of trust with each other. And at some point, bad stuff goes down when they're out trying to find like some sort of place where the Taliban is making explosives or something like that. Jake gets wounded and Ahmed carries him to safety. And then Jake finds out that Ahmed is not out of Afghanistan yet. He still has not received his visa for being an interpreter, because when the US went into Afghanistan, there were people that would interpret, and their lives were at great risk for helping the United States against the Taliban. And in exchange for their assistance, they were offered special visas to come to the United States when things were done. The US has followed through on some of those, but they have not on all of them, either through bureaucratic snafus or just things that happened, especially with the withdrawal of troops and the absolute fiasco that was, the complete and utter disaster that was, and leaving several people still behind, not only Americans, but also interpreters that haven't been able to escape. So anyway, the events of this story take place before all of that, but you are dropped right into the middle of this dangerous thing that these people do. So when John finds out that Ahmed is still trapped in Afghanistan, he makes it his mission to go and bring him out. That's the premise of the movie. It's very simple plot, though there's a lot that goes on in it. It is very complex as far as emotions. For me, it was. There was a scene in here where Jake was having flashbacks of what Ahmed did for him in the course of, carrying him to safety throughout all these dangerous areas. And it was showing the flashbacks and just tied in with the music. And that was heart-wrenching to watch that scene. For me, it was because I was thinking of how even though this story is fictional, it was true to life in the dangers that it portrayed these people going through, not just American soldiers, but also the Afghanistan people who stepped up to help putting their lives at risk and the lives of their family. And at the end of the movie, it gave a number. I can't remember what the number was, but it gave a number for how many interpreters had lost their lives for helping. And it's so freaking awful. But anyway, this movie really, for me, it was super impactful in driving that home. Not that I didn't know about it or wasn't aware of it, but it's not something that's at the forefront of your mind. And I felt like this movie did a really good job at presenting to us the great dangers that people went through when they were there. And I thought the acting, like I've already said, Jake was excellent. The guy who played Ahmed was he was so good. I'll never forget his performance in here. I'll never forget the story that was told. And I was reading through reviews of this, or just, skimming through some reviews. And for the most part, this has overwhelmingly positive reviews across the board, audience and critics alike. The critics love it more than the audience. The audience loves it more than the critics do. That's kind of to be expected. I can see why this is something that people really enjoyed. I just loved this film, and I don't even know where I was going with this. Where the heck was I going? Anyway, I was going to get into some of the various positives that I haven't touched on yet. Technical stuff. Like, if I remember what I was starting to say before I went into this long-winded thing, I'll come back to it, but whatever. I think I was just kind of rambling on and on about the dangers involved, and how we were very effectively shown what these people went through. So getting back to technical stuff, cinematography, I love the cinematography in here. It was excellent. Didn't really see any sort of issues with that. There were even some cool, nifty little things that were done with the camera work. One very simple example is there's a scene where Jake is sitting in a vehicle and he's talking to Ahmed. You'll see one of those pictures. It'll come around here. And the camera is showing Ahmed facing us, and it's showing Jake in the reflection of the side right there. And they have this conversation with each other. And I really liked how they did that. It was something so tiny, so simple. But I thought that was just nifty. I liked it. And I remember now what I was getting around to, because I just ran across a note about what I was talking about before I forgot what the heck I was saying. I was talking about the critics. It's overwhelmingly positive across the board. There were some negative-ish reviews that I saw, a couple that kind of stood out to me that one I agree with a little bit, and the other I have no idea. I really don't get what they're coming from. One reviewer referred to this as a muddled story. There was nothing muddled about it to me at all. I understood everything that was happening. I understood the emotions and the reasons for Jake's behavior in here. So I don't get that. Another one called this movie a paint by numbers, which in a lot of ways, that's accurate. However, some paint by numbers are better than others, and this is one of those times. This is a story we've seen before-ish, like buddies and helping each other and loyalty and sacrifice and protection and, stuff like that. But the way it was given to us was in a very hard-hitting, emotional, effective package. And so I have no complaints about this being something that's characterized as paint by numbers. There were several moments in here that were very tense. Even though I felt like I could sort of predict the outcome, I was still caught up in the emotion of it and the dangerous things that were happening and what the stakes were. I was very drawn into that. I was getting super pent up because I wanted the best for these characters, and I was so afraid that something awful was going to happen to them. And so because of that, I feel like that sort of thing elevates this movie above your typical paint by numbers. So yeah, I just, honestly, I have no real complaints about this film. Another reviewer, Sean Chandler, felt that this story might have been better as a limited series run. I can see his point with that, because maybe being with them more would have made it more impactful in the end. Honestly, I don't know. I could see it going either way, but I like this story being condensed down to the 2 hours. It wasn't overly long, and yet it also didn't feel like it was overly rushed. By the time Jake's character ends up deciding he's going to try to come back and rescue Ahmed, it's well over the halfway point. So if there could be any room for this film being expanded, maybe in that area, but the way it was carried out was pretty effective. It didn't feel like it was something that was super rushed or super compressed for time. The other things I appreciated about this was the demonstration of the absolute frustration that people within a bureaucratic system feel when they are trying to get something done, especially when lives are at stake. There is a scene in here that really hits that home. It's a little humorous, but at the same time, it's frustrating, and you can sympathize because many of us have been there in a similar situation to a certain degree, maybe not on that level, but trying to get something taken care of, and you just get the runaround and you get on hold and calls that get disconnected, and you never can reach anybody that can actually help you get something taken care of. And his frustration was palpable in here. Also, I liked the contrast between him trying to get the government, the army, to help him deal with this situation, and then also trying to get a private industry, a private security company to help him with the situation, and seeing the pros and cons to that as well. So the private security company was able to get things done for him in a quicker amount of time than the government was going to do it, but there were also snags with that. So I thought that was kind of interesting, the way that was laid out. Also, something that Sean Chandler mentioned in his review, I think he put it in a better way than what was going on in my head. So this movie, I was thinking to myself, wow, I really like this a lot, and this is a war movie, and I'm not crazy about war movies, but I loved this movie. And he mentioned that it's actually not so much a war movie as it is a soldier movie. Interactions between these soldiers and the camaraderie between them, and the intense connection that these people form with each other when they're in these very dangerous situations. And I think that's what it is that distinguishes this from your typical war movie, because this is really a movie about these two men and them helping each other to survive. And on a human level, it's just so compelling and very touching and inspirational at the same time. So yeah, I just am so happy that this movie ended up being as good as it was. And like I said in my intro, making up for the disappointment that was Operation Fortune. Not that I hated Operation Fortune, but it just was meh. And this is not meh to me, not at all. I loved it. I don't really have any cons, like I said. There are no post-credits scenes, but when the movie draws to a close, they show photographs of different soldiers with their interpreters. So it's worth sticking around to watch that photo slideshow sort of thing. It doesn't last the whole credits, but it was good to see that, it helped to sort of underscore this sort of story that we'd seen played out for us on the screen, and gave it a human feel to it. Not that it didn't already have that, but it's like, okay, we told you this story of these dangers that these men faced, and the interpreter, the danger that he was in. Let's show you some pictures of people that really lived through this danger. I thought that was a really nice touch. So I think I've gone through everything. I don't have anything else to add to it. Just love the movie. I can't say that enough. I gave it 4.5 stars on Letterboxd. Maybe when I go back and rewatch it at some point, and I will at some point, we'll be adding this to my library. Maybe I'll pick out flaws then that might adjust that score a little bit. But for right now, my initial impression, my initial reaction to this film is a rating that high. And also maybe part of it is that I was pleasantly surprised that Jake didn't annoy me as much as he did in that other movie. Oh my gosh. He was great in here. And yeah, this other guy. I felt drawn to this guy, this Ahmed character, because I work with an Ahmed. And so I was like, oh, he's got the same name. It's probably a common name. I have no clue, but it's not a name I hear all the time. Anyway, okay, I don't have anything else. I'm going to wrap this up. Hopefully I can get this up in time for Saturday. As I'm filming it, this is now already Saturday, so I got a bit of editing to do. Okay, you guys. Adios.